4 words. What is your goal? Hate these 4 words. Wish they were deleted from my calls. Would have saved me a lot of heartache and headache. Apparently, that was the crux of what got me my fine and got me in trouble. We had a full-time paralegal overseeing our sales calls. We had very strict regulations on our sales teams. We did not allow crazy financing programs. We did not allow claims to be made. We did not allow promises to be made. We listened, we audited, we refunded when we saw problems. Yet, the FTC was not happy with our sales calls and said that we were being deceptive. And when we dug deeper into it, we found out that it was due to something that they internally referred to as goal setting. And note, I said internally, because I don't see any public documentation about this, and I had never heard that this was not allowed. What is your goal on a sales call? Until I remember we brought Greg into our case just to kind of give us some advice on what we were expecting. He was in a room, and he looked at stuff, and within a couple hours he goes, well, I know exactly what the problem is. And he comes out and says, it's goal setting. Well, what the heck is that? Your calls. You're asking, on some of your calls I've heard, what is your goal? I'm like, this is ridiculous. Are you freaking kidding me? It's a normal sales question. Like, that can't possibly be. And so I was like, all right, whatever. And I didn't really fully believe it because I did see some other concerns and things that as we were digging, I'm like, oh, why did we do that? Why did we do this? Why did we do that? Sure enough, a year later, when there's finally the complaint letter coming and they've kind of planted their flag in the ground and we've turned over 600,000 documents and the investigation's nearing an end, guess what they planted the flag on? What is your goal? Goal setting, which is considered an implied earnings claim. And this is the one thing I feel triggers a lot of people. So if I were to say, as we're out there teaching and talking to marketers, here are some triggers. People do not like implied earnings claims. They think it's ridiculous. How can we not talk to the fact that someone will have certain types of results? How am I ever supposed to sell anything? People do not like the rules around testimonials. They get really worked up about it. That's ridiculous. I can't talk about my results and the results of my students when they're real. And like, why do I have all this? And like, I say results are not typical. And the third one that might be the most outlandish, where I get a lot of results from people, like I got a lot of response from people, is what is your goal? Goal setting. People are like, this is insane. I'm on a sales call. I need to know what they want. Like, how can I not ask that? So Greg, I want to have an honest conversation about this for the people that are listening. If someone's on the sales call, they're so used to asking this question. A, is there a right way to ask this question? Or B, I know you have an entirely different philosophy on it, so please tell us more about how do you guide your sales team clients on this question?
Most of my clients don't do goal setting. I told you that when we first met, and I do have clients all the time that we've talked about through Don't Say That and everything else that come out and say, well, I have to ask this. But I'm like, when I have a conversation, the first thing I ask is be honest with yourself. Are you asking because you really need to have this information in order to go forward in the conversation to offer your product and service in your program? Or is it you want them to live the dream? And if the problem is a lot of clients are not honest with themselves and are not honest with me when they say, oh, I absolutely need this. And then I dive down, I ask a couple of questions. And at the end of the day, after 3 or 4 questions, I'm like, no, it's not. You want them to live the dream. And yeah, of course I do. I want them to have the excitement so they can build up on this. And it's like, well, that's the wrong way to build excitement for the client because it creates the wrong net impression of what their expectations are. So there are clients of mine that will go through what the objectives of their customers are for a legitimate reason to determine whether or not which products they have to offer is the best situated for them. For example, if I have a FinEd client that does investments in the market, they may get on a conversation with the client and ask, well, what are your objectives in the market? Are you looking for potential investments that have short-term returns? Are you looking for investments that have longer-term returns? Are you looking for a combination of those? What are your objectives you're trying to accomplish? And they need to know that because they have 2 or 3 different products based upon what the client says. That's okay, right? They're not talking about a specific amount of money that they're going to make. They're not getting them to say, my goal is to make $10,000 a month. It's something that's very particular to the offer that they have. Most companies, though, that want to do this that I've talked to lately, they want to do it. I'll ask them, like, okay, what do you want? It's, well, I have to know where they're at financially, because if I don't know that they're in $40,000 in debt, then I can't play on the pain of that and how they get out of that. And it's like, okay, but what are you really selling? Are you selling everybody's going to be debt free tomorrow. No, it's the freedom, the financial freedom aspect of our offer. And it's like, okay, well, the collective net impression is what you're asking for. It's building up to saying, hey, what do you want to make? You're in debt? Okay, well, of course, you do this, you're going to get debt free. So it's an implied earnings claim. You're telling them if they join the program, they're going to be debt free. So you have to do it in a way that is legitimate. And unfortunately, and unfortunate for most of us, most marketers aren't honest with themselves about why they're asking those questions. Instead, what they should do is do a hard look in the mirror of what their offer is and determine what is driving that attention to their clients. So I reviewed an offer the other day. It's a good offer, but their letter that they have, their landing page, funnel that they have, it built on the premise of how much their other clients make with it, with very little explanation of what the product actually does for those clients to help them make money. So after a conversation, the simple solution for that was, why don't you focus more on what you do for clients to help them be successful in this endeavor? And when I mean success, don't focus on the money success, but actually finding the accomplishment of achieving the thing that you teach. And after some discussion, they were like, well, that's way more appealing than this other way. And I said, I agree. You're losing the demand of clients because you're talking about this goal setting and using illustrations of other consumers who have made similar money like that to try to enforce this type of decision, or they're going to buy because of the results they should now expect to receive, which in a lot of cases they don't, because a lot of clients will buy the product or service and not put the time and effort into it, won't do anything in it, and won't make any money with it. So how can you say, hey, what is your goal with this, when you know that 20%, 80%, I don't know the percentage of your clients aren't going to do anything? And if that's the case, you have to evaluate the underlying offer in the first place. If you have a large majority of clients that aren't doing anything with your offer, I would take a really hard look at your offer to see whether or not this is a legitimate offer out there in the market. But let's say you do. Maybe you got a good offer and you've got 20% of your clients that are, struggling, but you're doing it because they're setting this expectation, this goal setting, that they're going to make a certain amount of money. And that's the way the commission looks at it. So there are ways to do this without using what goals can we set to sell your product and services. Most of my clients hardly ever bring that up in the conversation. They talk about why they're there. What are the things? What do they want to change? Most people are there because they want change. What is the change? Why do they want the change? And I know you're going to say, well, they want the change because financially it sucks right now, but that's not always the case. There are individuals out there that are just not satisfied in what they're doing. They would make less money doing something else. My wife and I had a conversation with that the other day. We're driving through the fast food restaurant sign, and it said that it was like $20 an hour for starting cooks at this restaurant. It's a national chain. I said, here, this is the inflation problem that I have in my firm. I used to be able to hire paralegals for $12 an hour, but they can go work at fast food. And her comment to me was, I would much rather work in an office than to cook fast food. So there are people that are out there that want to change, not because it's necessarily more money, but because their environment they're around and the potential for growth is way better in different aspects. And instead of being creative, and it's funny, this client said this to me, we've gotten lazy, Greg. We've just relied on these things because other people do it for so long. We've stopped being creative writers. We've stopped being creative ad copyers. And if we were more creative and we were pushing ourselves to adapt and change, we would drive a different demographic to our offer. And I agreed with them. Most copywriters and marketers get lazy because they do things the same. Well, I'll tell you this, and even in my own business, I'm changing a different business model every 2 to 5 years. Why? Because the economy and market changes. And if you've been doing this for 20 years and you've been a marketer for that long and you haven't changed the way you do your marketing practices, then you're losing a group of business because you're failing to change. So if you're so reliant on saying, what is your goal? Then you need to look at yourself in the mirror and find out what's wrong with your ad copy and what's wrong with your telemarketing scripts. Because if you have to have that, then there's something wrong with your product or offer. Strong words. Yeah. It's a true statement. It just really is.
Well, no, it's interesting the way you put it. It's like if you are asking that question there is a very, very strong chance you're only asking it because you want to build upon it, right? Like in the world of sales, they call it future pacing. Future pacing is flat out just not something the FTC is okay with. It's literally in their books. I haven't heard it. I would imagine they would just say it's flat out manipulation. And in some ways, I can kind of see how it is, right? Because you're making someone live this fictitious life that they don't yet live, and you're making them totally believe that it's within a reach and that you're the only thing between them and that life, and it just feels a little bit
Well, that's the
not right.
misrepresentation. That's why the FTC flags it.
Yeah, it's so, we have been having calls. I'll tell the people have asked me this before. They've said, Anik, how are you getting around it? And here's my answer. Okay, you're not gonna whether you're gonna like it or not. So first and foremost, my answer is the way I get around it is I make it absolutely irrelevant. And let me explain a little bit more. One thing I have learned about compliant marketing, and this is going to hit home for some of you, and you're not going to like it, but just is what it is. Greg had his moment of giving you an absolute straight answer. I'll give you one. A lot of you are just selling to the wrong customers. And the customers who you are selling, you're right. There's probably very little, if any, way to sell to them compliantly because they need to be pulled and pushed and pried across the finish line because they're in dire situations. Money is hard to come by. They're in vulnerable situations. They don't fully understand what they're getting into, and it is usually the excitement, the hype, and the future pacing and the questions like, what is your goal, where you put them in a different state of mind, where you're physically removing them from a logical state of mind and you're purposely, knowingly putting them in this state of mind because that's where you can manipulate the sale out of them. I know, I just said it. It sounds wrong. Then I'm telling you it's the truth, because if you sell purely based off of the logic of what you are selling, what I have done is I have changed, in order to be able to avoid having to ask the question of what is your goal here on the sales call, I've changed everything about how I market in the front end of my program. And where I am filtering people the most is before they ever get on the sales call. You know what I've always had issues with? This is way prior to the FTC. I've always had an issue with the word strategy session. It's bullshit. Because when they get on the call, your entire intention is to sell them. There is no strategy. There is no discussion. There is no value to the customer. I've always had a problem with that. So long ago, I started enacting something where I said, you know what? We might get less calls booked, but I'm just going to be point blank and honest with people when they're booking the call. Say, hey, you're booking this call for an opportunity to see a more accelerated way to work with us. There's an additional investment involved if you decide to move forward. So book the call, have a conversation with us. If you want to move faster, if you want more intimate support, more intimate coaching, book the call. If not, you're in the right place. Keep going through the course. And what we found is we didn't see any major reduction in booking, maybe a little bit, but not much. But when the people got on, sometimes the first question they would ask is, can you tell me more about the product? Can you tell us more about the coaching? Can you tell me more about this? So they were already product driven.
Right.
They were already asking about the end service, right? Whether they have a goal of 10K is irrelevant. They want to know what you offer, and they're going to make a logical decision as to whether they want to do it or not. And so we've doubled, tripled down on that now even more. And here's the benefit of that. So I shake the tree way more before there's a call to be had. So what's happening is I need way less salespeople. I love that because now I have less risk, less management. Those people the ones who are working with me can make a lot more money, so they're not going to leave and churn and burn and leave. But what I'm doing is through mechanisms in the marketing, I'm just being very honest with people, right? I'm planning a phone call funnel right now. People also say, oh, Anik, you got in trouble for telesales. That must mean you're never going to do telesales. I'm like, no, believe it or not, actually, I am far more comfortable doing telesales today than I ever was before because now I understand the rules. I can watch over the team. We have Complyly, which will listen to every sales call and audit the call, so I know what's going on. Testimonials, another great example. I use testimonials about 5 times more today than I ever did before. Can you believe that? Yet it is the door that they use to get into my company, but because I understand it now. And so I'm doing it in a way I feel really comfortable. I feel good about it. I'm deploying it. So back to the call. We say right up front, I'm planning this one funnel right now, and in the funnel, before you go to the book the call, it flat out says, our programs that you're eventually going to see, we're going to see if you're a fit for, they start at $5,000 or more. please, if you're booking this call, do so with that in mind. And if that is a big concern or a big problem, don't do so right now. Maybe send us a support ticket. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. People will say, oh my God, that's ridiculous. My calls would drop. Great. Let them. You know what will happen to the conversion rate of the calls that you do take? They'll skyrocket. The refunds will plummet. You'll start attracting the right people. I know it's hard to understand and hard to fathom, especially for companies that are doing millions upon millions of dollars, have sales teams of 10, 15, 20 people. The idea of now only needing 3 or 4 people is daunting and scary, but I'm just telling you, the thing that Greg was trying to say is that it's not about avoiding the question, it's about avoiding the need to ever have to ask that question. Which means you have to change your marketing, you have to change your target demographic, you have to change the person you're talking to, and you have to trust that person. That's another thing I found. A lot of marketing tactics, if you think about them, a lot of marketing techniques, especially the ones that the FTC calls out, are tactics that clearly show you don't trust your customer to make good decisions. So you manipulate them and force them into making certain decisions. Whereas the route we've taken now, you know what? My entire approach to business is different. Today Greg, I didn't even tell you about this. I was talking to an affiliate that want to promote what we're doing. I've now had 2 of these conversations, and the affiliate was like, they're like, look, it's year end. I don't have any openings right now. I can do January. Do you know what Onik 3 years ago would have done? I'd have turned on the sales guy. I'd have been like, well, what about, and I would have gotten a promo sooner, because sooner is better. But you know what I do now? That sounds good. Let's book it in for that time. Why? Because what does it matter? That's when they want to do it. Let's do it when they want to do it. They'll go all out. If I squeeze in something, they're not going to do a full-blown job. Good job at it. So same ideology to customers. I have a lot of people right now that'll say, well, I don't know. This is my serious counter of objection when they say that. Maybe later. Okay. Let them buy when they want to buy. Stop forcing the sale. It's what creates problems. And so asking that question, I think if I summarize what Greg was trying to say, why are you really asking? Be real with yourself. Are you really asking because you're looking for ammunition that you can use? If you're really asking because you're genuinely trying to figure out which program they fit, then I don't think the FTC would call that goal setting. I think they would see that too. Like, oh, they were asking a question to see if they're qualified for this program or this program or that program. So anyways, that was my little monologue I wanted to put out there, was that because we had this conversation. I had this conversation with my sales team. I had this conversation with my company. I said, the only way we're going to be compliant is if we change all the way from the ad, the Facebook ad, the messaging, the type of messaging. And we have to remember that we want the upmarket audience. We don't want the downmarket audience. We don't want the vulnerable people. We don't want people. If you're buying our program that teaches you how to build an online business with the last $500 you have to your name, the chances that you will succeed in that program are like 0.1%, if not lower. I just know that. And so why do it? It's not right. Rather, why don't I charge $5,000 and go find the people that are well equipped to build a business right now? The beginning of the business will be a little bit rougher. It'll be a little bit tougher, but long term it'll be great. Like Complyly right now. You know, we work really hard right now to set ourselves up at Complyly to be an enterprise software solution. We want to serve lawyers like Greg. We want to serve organizations and companies that are doing $20, $30, $40 million. That doesn't mean we're not serving the marketer. But we know that that's what we want. It's going to take me 6 to 12 months to crack into that market. But once I'm in that market, I'm going to be signing annualized deals that are $30,000 to $100,000 a year with 3-year stick rates. 3-year contracts with many year stick rates. So you have to figure out what type of business do you want to build. And if you want to build the type of business that you can actually lean on, rely on, count on, you got to go after the better customers. And going after the better customers means you got to stop the manipulative tactics, trust them, and let them make their decision. And with that, that's my monologue. So that's the answer between Greg and I for the what is your goal objection. Yes, get rid of it. Stop trying to use it. And yes, you absolutely can sell without it. Greg, I'll give you the last word. Anything you want to add to this?
No, fair and accurate marketing practices. If you focus on what you actually deliver, it's going to be a better customer experience than what you expect or want them to think. And what I said is true. You're using phrases to manipulate the client to expect a certain thing that you couldn't deliver if you wanted to. And so that just makes people upset, and you don't have a good customer experience, and they want their money back. So instead, use other means. Get creative. Be the writers you are. Don't get lazy. Do things that'll help you to establish credibility with your client outside of, what is your goal. So that's my last statement.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Remember, don'tsaythat.com, compliantacademy.com. Run a free scan for up to 5,000 words at complyly.com. And, of course, tell other people about this. Help us spread the mission of compliance. Join the revolution of compliance. If you want to be a giant, go compliant. And, of course, if life pushes you, when life pushes you, stand straight, smile, and push it the heck back. Greg, thank you, as always, for your time. We'll see you all next week on the Don't Say That podcast. Bye.